Do I need to check this up there, Paul? Check, 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 test, test, test. Test, check, 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 check. Okay? Are you good? Or... Yep? Okay, thank you. So anybody who's getting confirmed or received that hasn't signed up yet, or I don't have your confirmation information, is there anybody left? Okay. 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 Yes. Okay. I have a couple question marks on here. That's good. Anyway, it's right here if you need it, so. It's just like for the service. Everybody's wandering in 2 minutes after or 3 minutes after. Yeah, it was terrible when I was up north, when I was in Page. I'd walk out to do announcements at 10:01, and there'd be 3 people there. And by the time I finished announcements, the church was full. So, because it took 5 minutes to get anywhere in Page. So nobody left until right before. So they just all showed up at the last second. So it took me a couple weeks to get used to that. I said, dang, they must really hate me. And then suddenly the church is full. So. All right, we're getting here. You watched me on TV this morning? Yeah. Is that right? You didn't give the sermon? I didn't. I was going to say, I don't even remember giving the sermon. Okay, good. Very good. So today you got to hear a pastoral sermon, unlike what you get from the rector. So thank God that we have some pastoral preachers around here. Sure. Okay. You have the same question? Okay. So we call caring for people, like we talked about last week with sacraments, pastoral care. That we're trying to create a community relationship with someone or some group of people. So that's referred to as pastoral care or help in some form or another. So somebody who preaches pastorally is preaching to try to help people get through something or whatever. So today, Sister Susan did the big pastoral sermon, the one about death. So generally, pastoral sermons are about helping an individual get through something in life or help them deal with something or whatever, okay? I'm more of a prophetic sermon, trying to be like Amos or Micah or somebody like that in the Hebrew Bible, where I'm trying to bring up things that are wrong in society that we have to fix and how we go about doing that. So I hope that I also preach pastorally sometimes, and I do that. But generally speaking, Sister Susan would be more of a pastoral sermon, and I would be more of a prophetic preacher. So is that's the idea. So who did we talk about last week? Nadia Bowles-Weber. So Nadia Bowles-Weber, if anybody's ever heard Nadia preach, she's a Lutheran pastor. Dave has, I'm sure some of you probably have. Nadia is a very pastoral preacher. We preach very differently. I love the way Nadia preaches, but I don't think I could ever do what she does. And I'm not sure she could do what I do, but we're just really different, and that's why it's a good thing, you know? So, okay. Anything else left over from last week or something else that somebody wants to throw out there before we get going here? Everybody good? Phoebe, here comes the microphone.
After everybody else, so maybe I'm repeating myself. Oh, yeah, okay. So, one of my ideas yesterday was to build, try to continue doing what we're doing in this church.
Right.
But also be flexible about new ideas on how to expand what we're doing.
Right.
Or add to that, or maybe alter something a little, but basically stick to what your mission has been in this church.
Yeah, it's your mission, not mine, but yeah.
And, well, your mission, now it's our mission. But anyway, my idea was to accept what we're doing and try to keep it, preserve it, and then maybe improve on it, and use the ideas in some other ways.
Okay.
So that's about it.
Sounds good to me. Sounds good to me. Yep, it sounds like that's about where you guys were coming down yesterday, so that's good. That's good. All right, ready? Okay. So today we're going to talk about polity, politics, how we govern ourselves, how all that works. So let's start with the prayer book in the little question and answer part, page 855. So the ministry on page 855, everybody have that? Anybody need a book? You all found a book? So somebody read that first question for me. Okay, let's get a microphone in there. Under ministry.
Okay, the first question,
Yep.
Who are the ministers of the church?
Yep. And go ahead.
The ministers of the church are laypersons, bishops, priests, and deacons.
Okay, so right there in our prayer book, in our question and answers, the ministers of the church are first lay people. Lay people. Very different than other churches. So in that last church I was just talking about that I was in, at the top of the bulletin, I put on there ministers. All people in this church are ministers of this church. So I think that's important for us to remember. That's a very different thing in the Episcopal Church than other churches. So try to keep that in mind a bit, okay? So I've alluded to this story if I haven't totally told you before, but I think you know that the Episcopal Church was set up by some of the same people who set up the American government. And that happened in Philadelphia in 1789. And after that, the U.S. Constitution was set up, and the whole makeup of how we were going to run the country was set up. Approximately one half of those people walked down the street to Christ Church and set up the Episcopal Church. So if what I describe sounds like the U.S. government, it is. So that our setup is very similar. So we have a presiding bishop, which is kind of like a president, but doesn't have as much power as a president, especially now. But that's another issue. Let's not get into that. And then we have a House of Bishops and a House of Deputies. So the House of Bishops is made up of every bishop in the church, retired or not. There's a movement to not have the retired bishops in that group, but we'll talk about that later. And a House of Deputies. And the House of Deputies is made up of half lay people and half clergy. And the lay people are voted on at DOS and conventions to go to a big general convention, which we do every 3 years. So it's kind of like the House of Representatives and the Senate, and then everything is built around that, okay? So we're going to go into all the details of how that works, but just so you understand, the setup is very much the same. Now, the whole thing about how lay people being the main ministers of the church, we're always still trying to envision what that looks like and what that's all about. We had, sorry, I didn't see you there, Lisa. What?
Sorry. You had mentioned that one of the reasons you are in the Episcopal Church is
Yep.
because of today and the polity of it.
Yep.
When you get there, would you elaborate more on how you've touched by it and how it affects you personally?
Yeah, so I mean, and that is the very first thing, that lay people are ministers of the church, and that there's not somebody on high running the boat. And growing up in the Roman Catholic tradition, where there is somebody on high that says this is what you'll believe and what you won't believe, I was not attracted to that on any level. So that was a big part of it for me. So, but I'll talk about that more as we go. Okay. So how you do this with lay people running things? We're still always trying to figure out how to do that best and what that looks like. A few years ago, we had a bishop in Nevada named Stuart Zabriskie, and I bring up Stuart because he came up with this idea called total ministry, and we actually set this thing up so that people were called up out of congregations to be priests, and they would be a priest for that congregation. It was basically a layperson that they just ordained to do this. And we actually had a canon in our Constitution and Canons. I should have brought our Constitution and Canons book. I don't remember if I talked about this yet, but our Constitution and Canons book is about 150 pages. It's about this thick with all of the rules of the church. If you go to, like, the Roman Catholic Church, there are 15 volumes of books, and ours is this big because there's a lot of this, you'll figure it out, okay, in it, it's that kind of feeling. So, and I always say, if you have to go to the canons of the church to figure out how to solve a problem in the church, you've already lost the battle. So I always know when I say, well, what does it say in the canons? I go, oh my gosh, did I just say that? So, but it's true. I mean, there's not a lot there, okay? So Stuart had this idea called total ministry. And we came up with a whole canon to ordain people at the local level. And that they would be the priests for that church. And of course, this is great in Nevada, or many places in the West, because there's churches out in the middle of nowhere, 150 miles from the next closest town. So it made a lot of sense. And the Canon 9 thing was really a cool thing, and people were ordained to serve in churches like that, and it just kind of died. And I think my personal feeling is that Canon 9 priests were always seen as not quite the same as Canon 7 priests, that were ordained under the regular canon. And I think they always felt slighted and it just it never, it did the opposite of what we were trying to do, make everybody equal, and it was making people feel different. So Canon 9 doesn't exist anymore, but the idea does. So like, Ricky's not a great example because, I mean, he's
Not
been,
a great example for many things.
he's been called up out of this congregation, but when he gets ordained, he's not going to come, in all likelihood, he's not going to come back to Grace St. Paul's. He's going to serve somewhere else. But there are people now that do enter the process with the idea of staying locally. So the Canon 9 thing still kind of exists in that form, just not the way it did before. So, and there are lots of different ways to get ordained now. In the past, you've always had to have a master's degree in divinity to get ordained. The Canon 9 thing changed that, and now it's just a little bit more flexible than it used to be. So I think that's a good thing, although I do believe that educated clergy are really important.
I think it's a very good thing.
Yeah, it's a very good thing. It's a very good thing. Yes, absolutely. So, okay, good. All right. So Episcopal. Does anybody know what the dictionary definition of Episcopal is? Somebody going to actually look real quickly there. The last one, there you go, Tim, you just said it, yep. So it's usually something like, depending on which dictionary you look at, one of them says, any of various churches governed by bishops, okay? And that is totally wrong for the Episcopal Church. We are not governed by bishops, as we just said. Bishops can't make decisions in this church without lay people, just like I can't. So that is not who we are at all. We have this balanced thing where lay people, bishops, priests, and deacons have to be involved. The Methodist Church, Lisa, sorry.
Then how do we get to be Grace St. Paul's Episcopal Church?
We
if
are.
We're not? Then what is the definition of Episcopal in the Episcopal Church, in this church?
I'm getting to that. Okay, all right. The word Episcopal means of a bishop, okay? And you all remember why we kept the word Episcopal, because we wanted to keep that bishop, priest, deacon order of clergy in the church. We wanted to keep the Catholic part of our tradition. But at the same time, we are just as much Protestant as we are Catholic. Now, this changes across the board. So a Methodist church, for example, is actually much closer to Episcopal than we are, because their bishops have much more authority than they do in the Episcopal Church. For example, a Methodist bishop can assign clergy to congregations. So you guys pick your own priest, as you're about to do, and you go out and search and go through that process, and then you get to choose who you want. In the Methodist Church, the bishop does that. And I'll step back and say that is also true in the Episcopal Church in a mission church. So there's a parish and a mission church. A mission church is a church that isn't financially supporting itself, and they get assistance from the diocese. In those places, a bishop can appoint a priest to be in a mission church, okay? Good? Am I confusing you all yet? Phoebe and then Suzanne.
I'm just thinking, what is the thinking and the philosophy behind that men and women that want to be a priest they don't have to go to divinity school now. I mean, and this man from Utah, what's his name? I can't think of his name. What was the idea that people, lay people, had the ability to become a priest, even though they didn't go through all the typical education, and so.
Yep, so Stewart's thought was, in a local congregation, far away from everything else, we could give somebody a minimal amount of training, and they could do the job, and it would be fine for that. That's what Stewart was thinking. And I don't mean to tell you that now we're in a position where it's not encouraged for somebody to get a master's in divinity now. There are still, virtually everyone still gets a master's degree to do this now. But it's just a little bit more flexible. A lot of bishops will allow online study and that kind of thing, which was just barely starting when I did this, and I won't tell you that story, but there's just a little bit more flexibility. It is still the norm for a clergy, a priest, to get a master's in divinity.
Yeah.
But there's just a little bit more flexibility based on circumstances.
And also, that I think that also we can choose who we want to come.
You
Out
will.
of all these candidates,
Yep.
we can choose.
Yep.
But eventually, the Bishop of Arizona, or whoever the presiding bishop is here, has to approve, don't they?
Yeah, when you'll get down to the end and you can pick somebody, and then the bishop needs
So
to
he
say,
has to okay it.
okay.
doesn't he?
Yes, you do all the choosing and all of that. The diocese can help you in that process, but the bishop has right of first refusal. So the bishop can say you can't. So for example, if you choose somebody and they don't have the proper credentials, then the bishop can say, no, you got to go back to the drawing
Yeah,
board.
I mean, he can veto the thing.
Huh?
He can veto it.
You can veto
Yeah.
it, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And that does happen, but it's pretty rare, and it's usually just for practical reasons. Okay? Okay. Good? Oh,
So not
Suzanne,
to
we
put
never
too-
got you in there, okay?
So not to put too fine a point on it,
Yep.
the bishop, although I think that's a really good point, if they say no, then they do have the power to, but that's not, what I meant to say though is they do have the power to ask people to retire and so on. Is that true? would
Wow,
you say?
you're gonna make me do that, aren't you? All right.
Suzanne.
So, okay. So to go to the first point, no, the bishop can't choose for you. The bishop can veto and say, go back to the drawing board and find somebody else, because this person can't do it because of whatever. The bishop or the diocese can recommend, and they may throw people in the ring for you to look at as possibilities. In a good situation, you'll get some assistance from the diocese in that way, okay? The retirement thing is a different story. So we have a mandatory retirement age in the Episcopal Church. That was voted on at General Convention by lay people and clergy together, okay? They made that decision that there would be a mandatory retirement age of 72. At the last General Convention, they tried to change that to 75, and that passed, but they appointed a committee first to make that happen. So that's not going to get passed until next General Convention. But those are lay people and clergy making those decisions to do that. Now, at that point, the bishop has enough flexibility to decide what retirement means. You still have to physically retire for going through the church pension group, but in many dioceses, people continue working through their retirement if the bishop deems that appropriate. Does that help? Okay. So as you know, we went through all of those circumstances here. This bishop decided that when she was elected, that she was going to make everybody live into this mandatory retirement and that they would physically have to retire at that point. Well, when real life came in, she realized that maybe this is not always the best thing. And that is why 4 days before our annual meeting, the bishop said, you know what, let's not do this, because maybe it would be the best thing if I stayed here during the whole process. That's the first time this diocese has ever done that. So, but that part is the bishop's call. I forgot we had all this to talk about. We'll never get finished.
Yes, we will.
I'm just kidding.
So the mandatory retirement age is specific to priests and
good
not
question.
the other clergy?
It's specific to bishops and priests,
Okay.
not to deacons. Thank you for bringing that up. So deacons, most deacons in the Episcopal Church are non-stipend. They don't get paid. So that puts them in a totally different category. Diaconal retirement has been left totally up to bishops. And remember, well, we haven't got to this yet. So what I'm about to tell you is that deacons report directly to bishops. Priests report to you, okay? You're my boss. Deacons, their boss is the bishop. Okay, so it's a totally different reporting structure. Good? Okay. Phoebe. That's good. This is good. It's all good.
Yeah. But now if you're retiring,
Uh-huh.
and you have to retire because it's 72, correct?
Well, yes,
Or
but
is it
that doesn't mean I
75?
have to leave this church. It's so that part's up to the bishop. So I am staying here until you find a new
Right.
rector.
But if you were leaving to go to another church, and you wanted to leave, and the laity in the church had no authority to prevent you from leaving, you can go to another church.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, so let's take retirement out of it.
Yeah, take that. Yeah.
So let's go to, I was in my last church in Page, and I decided to put my name out in the world to look at the possibility of going to another church. So we have this, which might have been described to you a little bit yesterday. We have this system, which used to be called OTM, and it's about to change, where clergy write up who they are in this little box, and they put that out into the Episcopal world, and that is what you use to find a priest to be here. So my name was out in that, and when Grace St. Paul's was looking for a rector, about 100 people applied for this job, and they filled out one of those profile things, and then you guys get those 100 names, which is what you're going to do, and then you're going to look it through them and say no, 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 and you're going to get it down to a small group of people, and then you're going to bring people in and look at those people until you decide who you want, okay? And if just so you know, since you're about to do this, so the whole congregation will be doing what you did yesterday, and then a search committee of you will look at all those names and narrow it down, and then when you get it down to 2 or 3, maybe 4, then it gets turned over to the vestry, and the vestry picks the person after the search committee narrows it down to that. So that's how it works. Did I answer your question? No. So any priest can go to another church whenever they want if the congregation chooses them.
That process only begins if the priest decides she wants to go to another church.
Yeah, yeah,
And so then that whole process starts.
yeah. Now, it can work the other way,
I
too.
mean, what if nobody wants this person to leave, and yet he's
Okay.
going to another priest?
Okay, so the congregation doesn't want that clergy there. Okay, that gets a little bit stickier, but that is your call. And the first thing that you would do is approach the clergy person and say, this is not working out the way we had hoped. We're hoping that you can consider moving on.
Are
Ricky?
you saying
Yeah, but
the congregation does not want the clergy person to leave?
the priest has decided he wants to be available,
Yeah,
called at another church. I
yes,
mean,
yeah.
and therefore, the laity in the church don't have any say.
Oh, you can't make them stay. I mean, if the person wants to
I
leave,
mean,
you can't
if he wants
say no.
to leave, he wants to leave.
chained to the
and
thing,
even if a whole lot of people in the church don't want him to leave, they don't have any power over that.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody wants to leave, they can leave.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
And this may be a little variation on the subject, but I just wondered when somebody, like you did before, puts your name in the hat
Right.
for other churches.
Right.
So then, what kind of things does one look for in the churches? In other words, how do the candidates decide, hey, I'd really like to go there. I don't
yes.
want to go there, da-da-da-da.
So right now, you are going to write a church profile, and it's going to describe what this church is all about and who you are. And I understand that you came to a lot of consensus on that yesterday, and that's good. So somebody looking for a church is going to look at those profiles and say, I think I'm a really good match for this church. And other people are going to say, blah. So, for example, I'll just throw you out a really simple one. So when you guys had your church profile, when I applied for this position, I got your profile and I looked at all the services that you do, and I kept looking and looking, and it said, Sunday services, 8 a.m., right to, 10 a.m., right to. And I looked again, and it said, right to. And then you were doing this service called M3M, this out-of-the-box service that was beyond right to. And I said, oh my gosh, this might be a place that where I would be attracted. And then I looked at your social ministry, and I said, this is the place. That's how you do it. So writing that profile, describing who you are is really important. Okay? Good? All right. So back to your book there, bottom of page 855. Is it something I said, Lisa? I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Okay. What is the ministry of a bishop? Anybody want to do that one? Thank you, Sadie. Just toss that microphone back there.
Not with my aid.
What is the ministry of a bishop? The ministry of a bishop is to represent Christ and his church, particularly as apostle, chief priest, and pastor of a diocese, to guard the faith, unity, and discipline of the whole church, to proclaim the word of God, to act in Christ's name for the reconciliation of the world and the building up of the church, and to ordain others to continue Christ's ministry.
So that's a pretty different job description than a bishop in other congregations. Notice that administration is not necessarily the bishop's primary function, that the bishop is the chief pastor, not a hierarchical head, but who the priest represents. So I represent the bishop here, but that's not hierarchically understood. The bishop is given no authority in our church without being advised by the standing committee. So at the diocesan, so we talked about the national level. Gosh, I did it again. Sorry, Bishop Shorey. The Episcopal Church, which is beyond the nation, and we have a House of Bishops, House of Deputies, and the presiding bishop. So at the diocesan level, you have a bishop and a standing committee, okay? And that's how decisions are made. And then at the church level, you have a vestry and a rector, okay? So the bishop can't make decisions without the standing committee. I can't make decisions without the vestry, okay? The standing committee is elected at diocesan convention, and the standing committee also must be half lay and half clergy, okay? So you see how we keep getting that in there everywhere. The bishop does have responsibility to, quote, admonish, suspend, or remove a priest or deacon, but only after getting the approval of the standing committee. So when something does go bad and somebody's screwing up, the bishop cannot just go in and pull the person out. The standing committee has to agree with that, okay? So that's our little checks and balances there. A presentment against a clergy can only be submitted by the standing committee. So once again, we're trying to balance those things. Priests are representative of bishops in individual churches. We talked about it, we didn't talk about vicar. So the rector is the priest in charge at a congregation, at a parish. A vicar is the priest in charge at a mission church, which is getting financial assistance, okay? And either one has the authority for and responsibility for the conduct of worship and the spiritual jurisdiction of the parish, as well as teaching, subject to the prayer book, the canons, and of course the pastoral direction of the bishop. So in the canons, it describes what lay people are in charge of, what the vestry is in charge of, and what the rector or vicar is in charge of. And one of the things that the rector is in charge of is worship. So I do have the ability to lay out a worship service however I want with the pastoral direction of the bishop. But I personally believe that anybody who does that is crazy, because everything we do, the goal is to do it with lay people and clergy together. So here at Grace St. Paul's, what we do is we have a liturgy committee. So every week I put together a liturgy, and then it goes to the liturgy committee, and then they look at it and go, are you crazy? And then they make me change stuff. So that's how we do things, and that's how we do things at every level, okay? Good. Back to page 856, deacon. Let's do the deacon. What is the ministry of a deacon? Middle of page 856.
The ministry of a deacon is to represent Christ in his church, particularly as a servant of those in need, and to assist bishops and priests in the proclamation of the gospel and the administration of the sacraments.
Okay. So the main ministry of a deacon is to serve those in need, to be a servant in some form. That's why the deacon sets the table in the church, to symbolize that they're being the servant in each situation. And you know, we have a few deacons here, and that's great. There are presently two forms of deacons in the church. There is a transitional deacon and a vocational deacon. A transitional deacon is somebody who wants to be a priest, but to be a priest in this church, you have to be a deacon first. So they have a period of time where they serve as a deacon to teach all of us to be servants, and then they become a priest. A vocational deacon is somebody who wants to be a deacon and live into the diaconate all the time. Some of us, I'm on this list, are trying to get rid of the transitional diaconate because we think it lessens the role of a deacon. We think if somebody wants to be a deacon, they should be a deacon. And this whole idea that you need to be a deacon first before you be a priest, for me, suggests this three-tier hierarchical ministry. We have these deacons down here, and then we have priests, and then we have bishops. And I think that gives the wrong impression because I think we're all the same. Lay people and priests and deacons should all be the same. And I just think it fosters that attitude. So some of us have tried to get the transitional diaconate eliminated. We got real close 6 years ago, and then we had to deal with all these other issues that were going on in the church, and we never got time to do it. But anyway, so that's the way we change things in the church. So I just throw that out for whatever, okay? Okay, so starting at the parish church, church membership is defined by baptism. The church's role is to welcome and nurture, not to create barriers. We have all these crazy rules about how we count people in the church, as Ricky will tell you, as he just finished the parochial report. So we count baptized members, people in the church who are baptized. And then we have this thing called members in good standing. And to be a member in good standing in the church, you have to go to communion 3 times a year, and you have to be a giver of record. So that means you have to give the church something, and you have to go to communion 3 times a year. I hate those rules, but you know how organizations are. They make rules for things, so that's how we count people, all right? The actual, Lisa moved to a new location. Okay.
Trying to throw me off.
So how in the world, now I can understand how you could figure if somebody's giving, because if they wrote a check or not for, $2 or $200 or $2,000
Giver
or
of record. That's
giver
right.
of record.
Right.
Okay. But how in this, as my mother would say, how in the Sam Hill do you figure out who goes to communion and how often? You said they have to go to communion 3 times. Is that right? Did I misunderstand
haven't
that?
you seen me marking little marks when you guys come up here for communion?
Please tell them how that
Haven't you
happens.
see that? Of course we don't count that. We just trust people, okay? We just trust people. So that's why those rules are silly. Okay, we have 2 more here.
When you say baptism, is that baptized in this church?
Yeah,
or
so
baptized in any church?
Thank you for bringing that up. So baptism, folks, once you're baptized, okay? So no matter what kind of church it is. Now, if somebody feels like, I'm talking about a Christian church, if you are baptized in a Trinitarian fashion anywhere, you are baptized. We don't re-baptize people. We had that heresy in the 2nd century. We're not doing that anymore. So now some people don't feel comfortable about their baptism, and that's different. And we can re-baptize. The great example of this now are trans folks. So you're baptized in one gender, and then you're not that gender. So what do we do with that? And the fact is, the church hasn't figured that out yet. So I'll tell you what I'm doing. If somebody wants to be baptized as a different gender, then we're going to baptize them. So that's but generally speaking, once you're baptized, you're baptized. Okay? And, there we go.
So I'm holding the envelope that's in the pew.
Yep.
Is that how you get to be a donor of record?
That would be one way. As long as we can tell who the money came from in any form, then you're a giver of record. You also don't have to give money to be a giver of record. Some people don't have any money, and that's okay. But if they donate their time, then that's the same thing, okay? So.
This is a slightly different topic, but it's something I'm very curious about, and that is confession. And you mentioned that the duty...
We did that last week, Phoebe, too late.
The deacon can pardon people, right?
A deacon can what?
And
Can a deacon give absolution? Is that what you're saying?
Well,
Asking?
this paragraph says that all parts that the deacon is allowed to do, one of them is pardoning. Is that part, is that?
So first of all, no clergy is pardoning anybody. That's God's acting. It's not us. But generally speaking, deacons do not take part in confession.
Yeah.
No.
But I mean, okay, so the other part of that question is that if you want to be pardoned for any reason and you want to have a confession,
Yes.
who do you go to?
A priest.
The high priest, I mean, the presiding priest in the church?
Any priest.
Or an assistant priest?
Any priest.
Okay.
Any priest. It's like the old George Carlin jokes where you tried to go to the Spanish priest because he didn't understand your sins. So we did talk about confession last week. We do have a right of private confession in the church, but we stress corporate confession, not private confession. Okay? Good? All right. So the actual governing of churches are left up to dioceses, but typically speaking, churches have an annual meeting. They elect a vestry. You elect that. And the vestry takes responsibility for finances and property. We go further than that here. Our vestry takes care of lots of things. And so we have a vestry that's elected by you. And then we have these crazy terms called senior warden and junior warden, which you probably have heard. And it's not somebody who keeps track of who's in jail. It's these crazy British words that we've kept. So anybody know what a senior warden and junior warden are? No, Suzanne, you don't. You've been doing this for 100 years. You don't know who they are. Okay, good. That says a lot. Anybody? Okay, so the junior warden is the warden of the people, is what we say. So the junior warden is generally responsible for the maintenance of the building, of how we take care of everything in the church. The senior warden is the warden of the rector or the vicar. So the only thing that I get to do all by my little self is pick a senior warden. That's the only thing that you guys can't control. I can pick whoever I want to be senior warden. You elect a junior warden. That person's responsible for the property. The senior warden is the right-hand person of the rector. Good? Okay. Tim.
Do you choose the senior warden from among the already elected vestry members, or do you just pick anybody else in the whole parish?
Good question. Good question. I've screwed up a lot and chosen somebody on the vestry to be senior warden, which causes all kinds of grief because then you have to elect somebody else. But you can do either. The senior warden can be on the vestry or could just be anybody in the parish. So to bring this home, folks, so 2 annual meetings ago, not this annual meeting, but the annual meeting before, I picked Phil Johnson to be senior warden. Phil Johnson had already been senior warden before. You have to have a break in between when that happens. The only reason I did that is because I knew that the bishop was going to say, Steve, get out of there. So I knew that Phil Johnson had been through this process, and he would be able to protect you from almost anything that was going on. And at the same time, you may remember that I asked Martha Whitaker to be an associate with the senior warden. I did that so that Martha could run your search committee, so that you would have people here that I knew had tons of experience and that could lead you through this no matter what kind of bad stuff happened. That was the reason that I chose them. And I promise you are going to thank me multiple times in the next couple years because Phil and Martha are the best. Martha was the first senior warden I had here. She protected me from so much stuff I can't even tell you about. She's fantastic. She'll do a great job for you. Okay. Good question. Generally speaking, senior wardens are served for a 3-year term. Junior wardens have to be elected year to year, but they usually serve a 3-year term too. Okay? So in this way, Episcopal parishes function more like a congregational church with some diocesan framework. You basically get to make your own decisions like a congregational church, except the diocese can vote things down. Okay? So the canons split responsibility between the rector and the vestry, as I was talking about. So each is assigned different things, but we try to just do everything together. All right? So priests basically teach worship, vestry, finances, property, that kind of thing. But we try to work together to do all of those things. All right? All right. So the rector, or in the case when a vicar gets to do this, rector gets to pick assistant clergy people. So you don't elect associates. So for example, you didn't elect Father Gary, we chose him. Now I'm supposed to have the ability to do that, but what I did was say, Father Gary's available, do you all want, and we talked about it together and we decided together. So, but the rector does have that ability. So vestries are agents and legal representatives of a parish in all matters concerning the corporate property and in the relations to its clergy. But control of the church and the parish buildings are assigned to the rector or the vicar. So you see what we're doing here again. We're making it impossible for somebody to do something by themselves. So the fact that the vestry are agents of the church is really important here at Grace St. Paul's now, because as we're getting sued by the neighborhood, the vestry is actually our agents. So that's kind of nice, I guess. So anyway, just so you know. A majority vote of the vestry can petition for help in resolving a dispute. So going back to any issue that you might have, the vestry can petition the diocese for help if they're having an issue. A vestry cannot remove a vicar or a rector in this diocese without the person's consent. And a vicar can't resign without the vestry's approval. So if somebody wants to leave, they do have to ask for permission to leave. Phoebe, back to your question, okay? So I guess technically, the vestry could say, no, you can't leave. I don't know of a case of that happening, but I guess it could. So we assume that the members of the parish know what is best for the community, and that's the way we've written the canons, so that the people are making those decisions. It's a very shared and equal ministry. So there you go. Good? Okay, diocese. So at the diocesan level, we have an annual convention with, again, lay delegates and clergy delegates. We elect them here at annual meeting. We elect a standing committee, which works with the bishop. Bishop selection works very much like rector selection. There's a nominating committee. They find a bunch of people. And then when we get down to the last few candidates, we have the people that have been elected to serve at annual convention. Those folks get to vote on the new bishop. So that's the year you really want to be a delegate to convention. And again, we vote by houses. So we have the lay people in one house and the clergy in another house. And when we have the space, this is the way we did it in my last diocese, we put all the lay people on one side and all the clergy people on the other side. And the person has to get elected with over 50% of both houses. It usually takes some time to elect a bishop because it's rare that somebody gets over 50% initially. I've been in a couple elections that took 6 or 7 ballots to get somebody elected. This bishop got elected on the first ballot, so that's how that works, okay? Lisa.
So what is the required retirement age for a bishop?
Oh.
And, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
And is it advantageous for the bishop to have served as a rector or a rector in other parishes? You know what I'm saying? Does that help a bishop get elected bishop? And at what age do they have to retire?
The retirement age is the same.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And does it help to be a rector before you're a bishop? I don't know how you could do it without that. I guess it's possible. I'm trying to think of a bishop who got elected without being a rector. I guess it's possible, but it would be very unusual.
I was just thinking that yes, absolutely, but even having served in different churches, it would be advantageous as well, just in terms of experience and knowledge.
Big time. Yep, absolutely. And those are all things you would consider when electing a bishop, and you did with the last bishop. So then we have 2 kinds of bishops. We have suffragan bishops, don't you love these words? And coadjutor bishops. So a suffragan bishop is an assisting bishop. So that's a bishop that serves in a diocese that's really big with lots of churches, and the bishop just can't get to all of them. So like the Diocese of LA, they have suffragan bishops because it's just impossible to get to all those churches, that kind of thing. And then a coadjutor bishop is a bishop that serves with a bishop until they learn the ropes. So that especially happens in big dioceses. Somebody gets elected bishop, they don't just throw them to the wolves. They usually serve for some period of time with the other bishop before they take over. Good. Phoebe.
So, I was just thinking, as we discussed earlier, and I brought this up, that the priest can choose to go to another church.
Yes.
Okay, so is there any stipulation about the number of years that the priest should at least fulfill before he leaves to another church? And this happened to me. I was involved with this.
Yeah, I can tell. I can tell. No, you don't legally have to serve in a church for a certain amount of time. There is an understanding about that, and generally speaking, that would be a minimum of 5 years, but that's not in writing, and you don't have to.
And depends on the situation.
It really does depend on the situation.
And where he was going and why he was going and so forth.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yep. There's no other.
Yeah, because I was involved in a church where the priest was enjoyed a great exception, and everybody was happy with him. And after 3 years, he went off to another church.
Yeah, well, it
And, you
it
know,
does happen, and
and
it
since,
can,
and because it's so long to get another priest, it, you know, it kind of.
absolutely, absolutely. And that is part of the problem with having shared leadership, you know, because you get to make those decisions on your own. Yep.
Given that the laity has a very strong role, and there are certain rules that the bishop has discretion over, if a bishop had something that was in their discretion to some degree, and they made a ruling, and the laity of the church, the parish in question, felt strongly that it was the wrong decision, do they have any recourse?
Yes. So that recourse would be to go to the standing committee of the diocese and have and go through that process. And that can get a little sticky, but that's the first step, is to go. And then if there's misconduct or something involved, we have a ruling called Title IV, and we have a set of rules for any sort of misconduct, and there's a reporting structure for that. So you would take it to a group in the diocese that's in charge of that and say, this person did this, and we need to do something about it.
What if
okay.
it's something that the congregation likes, ordaining women, same-sex marriage, and the bishop's like, oh, no, we're not going to do this. You go to the standing committee? Sorry, maybe this is an inappropriate question.
Yeah, you could go to the standing committee about that. And of course, those kind of issues get really difficult. And we've talked a little bit about the fact that we are a grassroots church and we make changes from the bottom up. So for example, before the church was doing same-sex weddings, we were doing same-sex weddings here at Grace St. Paul's. And I had to talk that out with the bishop when the bishop was saying, you can't do this. So I'll just share that story with you to give you some sense for how this happens in the church. So did I tell you this story about, okay. So this was when Bishop Kirk Smith was the bishop, and, you know, I had been here a couple years, and it was, you know, we had people waiting to do same-sex weddings, and I said, Bishop, I cannot live into my vows as I understand them without doing a wedding for a same-sex couple. And he said to me, do I want this going? It's okay. He said to me, well, we can do blessings now in the church. This is right after blessings were approved in the church. We can do blessings. Just call it a blessing. And I said, Bishop, you're not understanding me. I cannot do one kind of service for one group of people and another kind of service for another group of people. I can't live into my vows and do that. That makes no sense. And he looked me in the eyes and said, do you have to call it a wedding? And I said, that's kind of the point, Bishop. So he finally said, well, you can't, because that's the rules of the church right now. And I said, and the bishop was socially in the same place I was. He was trying to represent the church as best he could. So I said, well, Bishop, I can't do it. It's going to be a wedding. And he said, you know what the rules of the church are, and you know how I feel. Is that good enough for you? And I said, that's good enough for me. And he had sent out this thing telling us if we did a same-sex blessing, that we had to follow this exact liturgy that he had written up. I'm trying to decide if I can say this or not. So I said to him, so do I need to send you the liturgy exactly the way we're going to do it? Because it's not going to be exactly this. And he said, Keplinger, get out of my office. So I tell you that story because that's how we solve things in the church. So there is a protocol for how to do that and the process that you go through with the bishop or the standing committee to do it. But in the end, it usually comes down to that kind of thing. If it's not misconduct, we have very general, very specific rules about that we have to do. Does that help? No, I know. But I wanted to give you a sense of how that works. Yep. Go ahead, Dean.
Just tell us a little bit in general about the history of women in the church.
Of women?
Women,
Okay.
in various places, bishops,
Yes.
rectors. etc.
Yes. So,
Believes in a Catholic environment.
yeah.
That's where I think this is coming.
Yeah. So I think when we did the history class, I said I was embarrassed to say that the first women serving in vestries of the church was like 1970 something. It's incredibly embarrassing. But the way that we got women priests is just what we said. We broke the rules on purpose. We said, we're going to ordain these women because the church is taking too long to do this. So in 1974, is that right? 74? No. We ordained the Philadelphia 11, and those were 11 women that we ordained all at once, obviously in Philadelphia, and a group of bishops and priests did that together without the approval of the national church. It was the national church at the time. And then at the 1976 General Convention approved that ordination. So that's it. I mean, it wasn't the 1970s until that happened. Women bishops, we had, so Barbara Harris was bishop in 1989, 90, in that area. So that's how long it's been, that part of the process. So we were pretty late to the party, earlier than other mainline churches, but we got there. So does that help? Just
It's almost as if you have asked for forgiveness, then for permission in a lot of that.
absolutely. We're really good at that in the Episcopal Church. We do that a lot. And in fact, I have had people in the church say to me, including bishops, let's just do it and ask for forgiveness after. So it really is the way we change things.
My memory might be wrong, but I think around the same time in the 70s when the women could be deacons, that was when girls could first be acolytes. That's what
Yeah,
I
you're right.
remember, but I don't know if that's
I think that-
historically right.
Yeah, and I wasn't in the church then, but I think you're right. I think it was the early 70s. Yep. As sad as that is. But
This congregation uses a very interesting custom liturgy, and I understand that the bishop has approved that in discussion with you, and I'm afraid that liturgy is just going to go away when you're not here.
Uh-huh.
Is there anything that this congregation can do about that?
Yeah,
If-
pick the right priest. Seriously, I mean, that should be a big part of your profile. That we do out-of-the-box liturgies, and here's the kind of stuff we do, and we're looking for somebody who's creative in liturgical practice and that kind of thing. Just look for the right person.
And the part B to that question is, when there's a new bishop, can the new bishop say, you can't do that anymore, Grace St. Paul's?
Yes. I mean, in theory, the bishop can say, you can't do this. And in fact, we have talked about the words of institution, right? We did talk about that. So you know, Bishop Smith said, that's beyond me. You can't have the people sharing the words of institution, and that's how we got in that place. Every bishop has their line at certain places, and the rector has to negotiate and come up with the best way to do that. But yes, a bishop can say you can't do that. And so I'll just tell you this story because it's the most recent one. James Caligari and Chris Easto, who were members of this parish for, I don't know, 35 years. You know, they just moved to, where did they just move?
Tasmania.
Thank you, Tasmania. And so they got there and they went to the Anglican church, and the priest there said, I'm sorry, but you can't serve on any committee or serve in the church if you're in a same-sex relationship. They've been married for 25 years. So they left because the priest there was told by the bishop that they couldn't do it. Now that's out of this country, but it does happen, and there's been major splits in this church because of it. So I mean, bishops do have that right. There's not very many left in this country that would do that, but there's a couple out there. Yep. Sorry. Lisa.
So do James and Chris have any
recourse?
Yeah, any recourse whatsoever with, like, at a general convention saying what this is happening?
Well, absolutely, and they might do that, and I don't know if they went to the standing committee first. That would be the first step there, but I assume that diocese is just very, very non-progressive. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
And you know, you guys, we forget what the whole church is still dealing with on lots of levels.
So
and
that makes
GAFCON's made a big, you know, it's really affected people. All those churches in Nigeria that are out there, it's affected folks.
So that makes me think how important being able to live stream and then have it be on YouTube. I mean, they could still be active
Exactly.
members of this church and participate
Exactly.
on the other side of the world.
And
practically.
that happens all the time. Yep, that's why our live stream keeps growing.
That just gives me chills. That's so important.
It really is. It really is. But that's how we change stuff, okay? All right, so diocesan level, so Episcopal church level. So no bishop can be consecrated without 3 other bishops to ensure that the diocese has approval of the larger church. We've had a couple dioceses try this recently. South Carolina is the one to come to mind. They tried to elect this bishop who was extremely conservative and wouldn't allow any of that stuff. And that couldn't happen because they couldn't find 3 bishops to ordain him. So there is that check there too, so that's good. But the diocese has to have the approval of the larger church. Today, the election of a bishop in the United States must have approval of the majority of the diocese. So that's how we've gotten to the point where we're a little bit more careful about this.
We have in Tucson a church, St. Bede's, that markets itself as part of the Anglican Communion, but not part of the Episcopal Church. And one part of the reason why they do that is because they don't want any gay people.
Yeah, I mean, that's one reason.
How did they get away with that?
How did they what?
Get away with that?
They leave the church. They left the Episcopal Church and formed their own communion or associated themselves with a bishop in Nigeria. That's how a couple people have done it. There's a church on Ina, Anglican, thank you, St. Bede's Anglican Church.
Yeah, that's who she was talking about.
Oh, is that who you're talking about? Okay, that's what they did. They just left. You guys have such good questions.
Well, here's a good one. What's the plural of diocese?
What's what? The plural of diocese. Bunch of smartasses.
Great question.
The plural of diocese is dioceses.
That's so stupid.
And I know that is a terrible word and really hard to say. And my next sentence was, we have 114 dioceses in the church. So,
Real quick, what defines, you mentioned there's the Diocese of Los Angeles. Are these things organized by state or geography, or what is the?
yeah, good question. It's both. So we started with like states, but then it goes by number of people and number of churches. So we just broke things up to make that work. And that decision was made at the Episcopal Church level. We have diocese, and I'm going to get to the next step beyond diocese here in a second. But that's how we do it. So we just organize by number of people and number of churches. So obviously we need, I think there's 6 dioceses in California. Okay. Okay, good. So we have 114 dioceses in the world in the Episcopal Church, and that includes Navajo land, and Europe is its own diocese, all of Europe, El Salvador, Ecuador, Colombia, Mexico, Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Honduras, and at last General Convention, we added Cuba. So all those folks are part of the Episcopal Church. So just as a diocese is bishop and standing committee, the National Church, as we talked about, has a presiding bishop and an executive council, and they're elected at General Convention, which I think you remember is held every 3 years, okay? General Convention meets in 2 houses, as we talked about, House of Bishops, House of Deputies. House of Deputies, each diocese is represented by 4 lay deputies and 4 clerical deputies. So no matter how big your diocese is, you get 4 and 4, like the Senate. Okay, get it? House and the House of Bishops is more like the House of Representatives. They're elected at convention. So General Convention, we talk about budget. We set up an executive council, we vote for them, we adopt resolutions. We adopt so many resolutions, hundreds and hundreds of them, because we only have 10 days to do all the work for 3 years. Prayer book revisions, and we're still working on the new prayer book. Hymnal revisions, and that's how we change theology and dogma in the church, just like we do everything else. We vote. The presiding bishop is our chief pastor and CEO, but again, the presiding bishop cannot speak for all of us. He can make statements, but he's not representing all of us. So there you go. There are 9 provinces in the Episcopal Church, so that's just a bunch of dioceses going together. We are in Province 7. So we just do that by activities. So that's just so we have another group of people for everybody to get together in groups. And then, of course, we are part of the Anglican Communion. And we talked about the fact that what holds the Anglican Communion together are bonds of affection. And we theologically disagree on lots and lots of stuff. So we're bound together by that common heritage and a common understanding of faith and worship, and that's just about it. We refer to the Archbishop of Canterbury as the senior member of the family, and as you all know, Sarah Mullally is the first woman to be elected Archbishop of Canterbury, which is causing all kinds of grief in Africa, so that's very exciting, and in a few other places. So every 10 years, the Archbishop of Canterbury calls the Lambeth Conference, and all the bishops in all the world come together at this conference, and they talk about things. 1998 was the first year we had women bishops at the Lambeth Conference. Remember that all the resolutions from Lambeth are non-binding, so the bishops can make any statement they want, but it doesn't mean anything unless lay people say, okay, that's fine. So whenever you hear anything from Lambeth Conference, just remember it's not binding on any of us because it's only bishops. It's just a statement of their opinions. Each national church remains free to make their own decisions. There's a thing called the Anglican Consultative Council, and that's elected membership of bishops, priests, and lay people, of course, to talk about things for the whole Anglican communion. So we are basically an international church without a governing body. So it's pretty weird. But we're really trying to understand the church as a living body and not a bureaucracy. Does that help? How am I doing here? We got 7 minutes. We're good. Okay. What else? What else? Here we go.
I'm not sure you can do this in 7 minutes, but could you talk a little bit about...
That's like GSP Today. You all know GSP Today? We talk about the sermons on Monday at noon on Zoom. And every GSP Today, it seems, at 2 minutes of one, somebody asks the biggest philosophical question ever. Isn't that right, Lisa? So, sorry.
Schism. I keep hearing that churches in Africa want to split from the Anglican Communion. And is there a mechanism to do that, or would they just be making it up on the fly?
Well, as we talked about St. Bede's, their mechanism to leave the church was to say goodbye, and they said our new bishop will be the Bishop of Nigeria or whatever they picked. So that's how they do it. So that's the only mechanism. And they just met a couple weeks ago at the GAFCON conference, and that's what that conference was about, was deciding if they were going to leave the mother church. And that was mostly about Sarah Mullally getting elected. So they did not vote to leave the church at that conference, but it's possible they could in the future. And the mechanism is whatever they make up.
If there were a church in Tasmania or Africa or North Carolina that felt that, hey, this is not how I believe the church should be, could they then petition to be part of the Episcopal tradition in the U.S.?
Yes, and that has happened.
Ah, cool.
That has happened. And so I mentioned all those dioceses that are outside the United States. That's how some of that happened. You know, they came in and said, we want to be a part of this more progressive tradition.
So if it was the same people sort of drafting the U.S. Constitution and the Constitution and canon system of the Episcopal Church, one of the things about the United States is taxes. Money goes to the federal government. So I am a new giver of record here, and I'm curious what percentage of that goes to support the diocese?
Wow, you guys are really...
If anything from there goes to support the Anglican communion?
Yeah.
Money's an interesting part of the story, too.
Thank you.
Tell me about it.
Thanks for bringing that up. I should have talked about that. That's really good. In fact, I need to write that down so I talk about it next time. So 16.9% of what you give here goes to the diocese. So it's a nice chunk of change, but that's what we pay to be part of the Episcopal Church. And I'll share with you that there have been discussions here about whether we need to be a part of the Episcopal Church, because that's a lot of money. But the diocese does many things for us and offers us many things and houses us in many ways. And right now, the Episcopal Church is going to pay for this lawsuit. I don't know that we're going to have to pay anything. So when push comes to shove, I am really glad that we stayed a part of that. So that's the first one. 16.9% of what you give. That's right, Dave, isn't it? Okay. Yeah, it is. Goes to the diocese, and then the diocese pays 10% of all of the money they get from churches to the Episcopal Church in New York, okay? So then there's those people like the rector here who says, how come they pay 10 and we pay 16.9? But let's not go there. So, that's a really good question. Thanks for bringing that up. I should have talked about that.
Yeah, now the woman bishop in England, whatever, I forget, I don't know.
Sarah Mullally.
Is she bishop of all the dioceses in Africa?
So the Archbishop of Canterbury is the figurehead of the whole Anglican Communion. What did I just?
Yeah.
What did I call her? The senior member of the family is what we call her.
But I mean,
So-
under her purview, all the dioceses outside of the United States is under her
Well,
aegis?
see, but it's not really a hierarchy. She is our senior member, so we respect her and honor her, but she can't tell us what to do. So it's really different than other churches.
So everybody else can make their own rules.
Yeah, well, that's what happens. Yeah, that is what happens. Yes.
So,
So she cannot say, you can't do this.
Yeah, but I mean, for instance, we discussed the same-sex marriage
Yeah.
business. It's a law in this country, but what about the other dioceses?
So everybody's different. I mean, outside of the Episcopal Church, everybody's different. And we have led the church in that direction. I mean, the United States.
That's what I thought.
So England's still behind us. They just elected their first woman Archbishop of Canterbury just now. But they'll catch up. You know, it's England. It takes them a while. Okay. So they'll catch up with us. But yeah, everybody gets to make their own.
So yesterday's meeting was facilitated by somebody called Canon Anita. What
Yes.
does that title Canon mean?
Oh, thank you. We missed canon too? Okay. So canon is a title. Well, you got Lisa in the back too. Canon is a title for it's a title for a specific thing that you do in your job description at the diocesan level. So anybody who serves at the diocesan level that has a specific job, they're called a canon. So Canon Anita, her job is to be is discernment and getting people in, helping churches to get clergy in their place. What's that?
Canon Alex is over.
So yeah, and that is not a clerical position. It can be lay people. So Ricky's mentioning Canon Alex Leonard, who was in charge of African American ministries and
The
social
Native American
justice ministries and that kind of thing. So it's just a title for somebody who has a specific job. Thanks for bringing that up too. Lisa?
I was just going to add what you just said about what the senior person in England of Canterbury, etc.
Yep.
can't tell us what to do.
Yep.
And that goes back exactly to what you said in the very beginning
Right.
about one of the reasons you became an Episcopalian.
Exactly. Thank you.
Whoopee.
Full circle.
Perfect wrap.
Full circle, exactly. That's exactly right. The word I was trying to think of was canon to the ordinary is her job. So.
As long as we're doing titles and labels and
Yeah.
roles, what is sexton? Where does the word sexton come from?
Wow. So that's another British word that we got stuck with, and a sexton is somebody who physically cares for the plant, for the plant.
And nobody knows what it means.
So, you know, we try really hard at Grace St. Paul's to not use those terms as much as we can. I talked about the fact that I don't call it Eucharist because half the world doesn't know what that means. So we try our darndest. So, like, you know, the back of the church is the narthex, this is the nave, and this is, what is this?
Chancel.
The chancel, thank you. I try not to use any of those words because it just separates people, I think, from what we're doing. So I'm not good at holding together that tradition. I just don't think it's terribly helpful. But you need to know what they all mean. So, Dave, and then we got to stop. Just to honor, unless you guys vote to.
First of all, on the 16.9, is that of all donations or does that include grants and other revenues?
It is actually, so when we have to apply our budget to that, no, it's all income.
Okay.
Yep.
And secondly, I want to make an editorial comment related to a few things I heard yesterday. And as far as polity goes, it goes to the relationship between congregation and rector. I hear a lot of people saying that we're going to hire a priest. And the language that I've heard in decades in other denominations and here is that we issue a call to a priest.
Correct.
And the priest candidate decides whether that fits the path of ministry that he or she wants to pursue, and if so, accepts the call, and we go through the mechanics you described.
Yep.
So one person even said, well, we should hire a person and have a probationary period. That's not the way it works. So we need to have the right frame of mind around that. And as we put together our profile and express our opinions, I also heard a number of things that were very strongly expressed and desired in the way of qualities, attributes, and so forth. And it's quite typical when a new leader is called, some people leave the church. And we need to be prepared for that. We need to hear each other as we talk about it going to the issuance of the call.
Yep.
And to work through that in an open and loving way and not draw lines between ourselves as we go through that process of change.
Yep, thank you for all of that, Dave. Yes, and that is the proper language, issuing a call. We do have probationary periods for people that are hired here, but we issue calls to clergy. So thank you for that. Yep, and yeah, that's why this process is so important, so that people don't feel like they need to leave. We need to make sure everybody's voice is heard. Yep. We're past time, so if you need to leave, you can leave, but you're welcome.
As somebody who's brand new, all the titles, the names,
Yep.
it's just confusing beyond belief.
Yeah.
Photographs and names on the website would be so helpful.
Well, we have staff on the website, but we could, but we've got to get our directory finished. I know, yes.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Thank you. Thanks for that reminder. We have to make that happen. Thank you all very, very much. If you're welcome. So one more class. We're doing this on Palm Sunday. Sorry, I tried to set it up so we finished before Palm Sunday, but we didn't make it. So one more class next week for Palm Sunday. Bishop's visit is when you all come in. If you haven't gotten on the list to get received or confirmed, please do that before you go. And thank you all. Thank you, thank you. What about Palm Sunday? Yeah. Your last class, right here. Last class. Then we'll have Easter, and then the bishop comes. Okay? Okay. Yep. Anybody else? It's April 19th is the day you get received. No, April